Discovery and Awakening. The ice of Europa cracked beneath Commander Ryukwon's drill, sending vibrations up through her exosuit's sensors. 3 months into humanity's first deep ice expedition on Jupiter's most promising moon, and they were finally approaching what the orbital scans had identified as an anomaly, a perfect sphere of unknown material embedded 2 kilometers beneath the moon's frozen surface. Approaching final 50 meters, Rhea reported to the research station floating in orbit, her breath fogged inside her helmet despite the environmental controls. Temperatures rising around the anomaly. Definitely not natural. Dr. Emerson's voice crackled through her comms. The energy readings are spiking. Commander, proceed with caution. The Europa expedition was humanity's boldest venture yet, a collaborative mission from Earth's United Space Agencies to investigate the mysterious heat signatures detected beneath the moon's icy crust. After centuries of theoretical debates about extraterrestrial life, humanity was finally putting boots on the ground to look for answers. What they hadn't expected was to find technology. Rhea's drill broke through the final layer of ice, and she found herself staring into a perfect spherical chamber hollowed out of Europa's interior. At its center hovered a metallic dodecahedron, each of its 12 faces inscribed with symbols that seemed to shift and change as she watched. "I've made visual contact," she whispered, knowing the team above was hanging on her every word. "It's artificial. Definitely not natural formation. Human origin?" Dr. Emerson asked, though they both knew the answer. "No." Rhea moved closer, her suit's lights reflecting off the strange metal. "We don't have the technology to create something like this. And these markings, they're not static. They're changing as I watch." She reached out instinctively, her gloved hand hovering just above the surface of the artifact. The symbols responded, shifting more rapidly, pulsing with an inner light that grew brighter. "Commander Kwan, do not touch the artifact until we've run more scans." Emerson's voice had taken on an edge of panic. Too late. Rhea felt it calling to her, a sensation that bypassed her conscious mind and spoke directly to something deeper. Her hand made contact with the cool metal surface. The artifact pulsed once, brilliantly, then projected a holographic star map that filled the chamber. At its center was their solar system, and approaching it from one edge was a vast armada of ships. "We're getting massive energy readings," Emerson shouted through the comms. "What's happening down there?" "It's a warning," Rhea said, understanding flowing into her mind directly from the artifact. "Something is coming. They're called the Voidborn, and they've done this before, wiped out civilizations across multiple galaxies." The knowledge transferred faster now, images and concepts flooding her consciousness. The artifact was a sentinel, created by a long-vanished species called the progenitors. They had seeded potentially habitable worlds with these devices, and with modified versions of their own genetic code, the building blocks that would eventually evolve into humanity. "The progenitors," she gasped, struggling to process the information deluge. "They were wiped out by the Voidborn, but before they died, they hid these weapons, these keys." "Commander, your vitals are spiking dangerously. We're sending the retrieval team." Rhea barely heard him. The artifact was showing her the truth now. Humanity wasn't just another evolved species. They were designed, their DNA containing dormant sections that the progenitors had engineered as a final failsafe against the Voidborn. The artifact wasn't just a warning system, it was an activation key. "They're already here," she whispered as the holographic display zoomed out, showing the Voidborn fleet already entering the Kuiper Belt. Pluto's research station went dark because they've already arrived. Above her, on the research station, alarms began to blare. The long-range sensors had finally detected what the artifact had already shown her. Massive ships of unknown origin appearing at the edge of the solar system, moving inward at impossible speeds. The artifact pulsed again, and Rhea felt something change within her. Dormant neural pathways activated, her mind expanding beyond normal human consciousness. Her hands began to glow with the same energy that pulsed within the artifact. I understand now, she said, her voice calm despite the transformation taking place. The progenitors didn't just leave us warnings. They left us weapons, themselves, their abilities encoded in our DNA. The retrieval team burst into the chamber, their faces visible through their helmets, expressions of shock as they witnessed Raya floating several inches above the ground, the artifact now orbiting around her like a satellite. Commander Quan, one of them ventured. Raya turned to them, her eyes now containing galaxies. The Voidborn are coming to finish what they started millions of years ago. They sensed the artifact's activation. They'd know what we could become. Above them, the research station reported the first attacks. Voidborn scout ships had appeared without warning, their weapons tearing through Earth's orbital defenses like paper. Humanity's first interplanetary war had begun, and they were hopelessly outmatched by an enemy that had been conquering worlds since before humans walked upright. Get everyone back to Earth, Rhea ordered, the artifact now pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. I need to find the others. Others? Dr. Emerson's voice was barely audible through the increasingly static-filled comms. The other sentinels. The other keys. Rhea floated toward the exit, the artifact now shrinking until it could rest in her palm. This isn't the only one. There are more hidden throughout the solar system. Each one activates more of the dormant abilities in those with the right genetic markers. As the Europa base evacuated, scrambling to return to an Earth that was about to face its greatest threat, Raya Kwan stepped out onto the icy surface of the moon. No longer needing her exosuit to survive in the vacuum of space, the artifact had changed her fundamentally, awakening abilities that had lain dormant in human DNA for millennia. She looked up at Jupiter looming above, then further out toward the approaching Voidborn fleet. They had come to eradicate humanity before it could reclaim its progenitor heritage. They were too late. Rhea launched herself from Europa's surface, accelerating at impossible speeds toward Mars, where she knew, somehow, another sentinel waited. The battle for humanity's survival had begun, and the weapons they needed were buried within themselves, waiting to be awakened. Back on Earth, General Nathaniel Torres stared at the emergency broadcasts flooding in from the outer system outposts. The Voidborn ships had already destroyed the Ganymede research facility and were systematically working their way inward, targeting every human settlement beyond the asteroid belt. How the hell do we fight this? He demanded of the hastily assembled Joint Chiefs. Their technology is centuries beyond ours. Dr. Emerson's transmission from the evacuating Europa station painted an even stranger picture. Commander Kwan, transformed by the alien artifact, flying through space without protection, talking about dormant abilities and ancient creators. Sir, a young lieutenant interrupted, we're getting reports of incidents all over Earth. The screens in the war room filled with footage from around the globe. A college student in Tokyo levitating metal objects with her mind. Twins in Brazil generating force fields that deflected a falling construction beam. An elderly man in Kenya who suddenly spoke 40 languages he had never studied. It's happening exactly as Commander Kwan described. Dr. Emerson's voice came through the speakers. The activation of the Europa artifact seems to have triggered a cascading effect in individuals carrying specific genetic markers. The dormant progenitor DNA is waking up. General Torres watched as more reports flooded in. These awakened abilities were appearing randomly across Earth's population, manifesting as telekinesis, enhanced cognition, energy manipulation, and dozens of other seemingly impossible skills. How many? He asked. Thousands so far, with the numbers increasing exponentially, came the reply. But they're scattered, untrained, and many are panicking. Torres made his decision. Find them. All of them. We need to understand what we're dealing with before the Voidborn reach Earth. On Mars, Raya Kwan descended toward the Olympus Mons crater, drawn by the same instinctive knowledge that had guided her from Europa. The second sentinel was here, buried beneath the largest volcano in the solar system. As she extracted it, another dodecahedron, identical to the first, Her expanded consciousness connected briefly with Earth. She felt the awakening happening there, thousands of minds suddenly expanding beyond normal human limitations as the dormant DNA activated. Not enough, she whispered to herself. Not fast enough. The Voidborn fleet had already reached the asteroid belt, methodically destroying the mining colonies established there. Their ships were biomechanical nightmares, twisted forms that seemed to exist partially in another dimension. Rhea activated the Mars Sentinel, absorbing its energy as she had the first. Each artifact increased her connection to the progenitor legacy, showing her more of their history, their war with the Voidborn, and their desperate plan to preserve their essence within a new species that might one day reclaim the stars. Venus next, she said to herself, accelerating away from the red planet with the second artifact merged into her being. Then Mercury, then Earth itself. As humanity scrambled to prepare for an impossible war, Rhea raced across the solar system, awakening the ancient network that would give them their only chance at survival against an enemy that had already destroyed one advanced civilization and was determined to prevent another from rising from its ashes. Ascension and victory. 3 weeks after the first Voidborn ships appeared at the edge of the solar system, Earth was under siege. The alien fleet hung in low orbit, their massive shadow ships blocking out the sun over major cities. Their ground forces, biomechanical horrors that seemed more machine than living creature, had established beachheads on every continent. Conventional weapons barely slowed them down. Nuclear strikes were absorbed by their advanced shielding technology. Humanity's most sophisticated defense systems were dismantled within hours. But the Voidborn advance had stalled. What should have been a quick extermination was turning into a protracted battle, thanks to the exponentially growing number of humans manifesting progenitor abilities. In the ruins of what had once been downtown Singapore, Maya Chen ducked behind a collapsed wall as Voidborn hunters swept the area. Since the awakening 3 days ago, she discovered her ability to manipulate electronic systems with her mind, a talent that made her both invaluable to the resistance and a prime target for the invaders. "They're coming around the east side," whispered Jamal, a former accountant who could now see through solid objects. 6 of them, heavy weapons. Maya nodded, focusing her mind on the nearest Voidborn scout. She could sense its internal systems, a bizarre blend of technology and organic components. With careful precision, she sent a surge of misdirection through its targeting array. The Voidborn suddenly opened fire on a shadow several meters from their actual position. The resistance fighters used the confusion to slip away through the sewers, carrying precious data salvaged from a downed Voidborn ship. Similar scenes played out across the globe as awakened humans coordinated through a psychic network that had spontaneously formed among them. What they lacked in training and discipline, they made up for with raw power and the evolutionary advantage of human adaptability. The progenitors had engineered them well. In orbit above Earth, aboard the Voidborn command vessel, Supreme Commander Xelthrax reviewed the concerning reports. What should have been a simple cleansing operation had turned into a grueling conflict. "The human adaptation rate exceeds our models," reported his second-in-command. "Their awakened abilities are developing faster than we anticipated. Some are already approaching level 3 cognition." Xelthrax hissed with frustration. They had encountered progenitor failsafe species before, remnant civilizations seeded with dormant genetic potential. Usually, they could be eliminated before the awakening reached critical mass. "Deploy the null spheres," he ordered. "Target their largest population centers first. We must prevent them from coordinating." On Earth, in the underground command center that had once been NOAID, General Torres monitored the global resistance efforts. The awakened humans were organized into specialized teams, each using their unique abilities to counter specific Voidborn tactics. "Sir," his aide reported, "we've lost contact with the European network. Some kind of dampening field." Torres grimaced. They were fighting a losing battle, even with the awakened on their side. Without some game-changing advantage, humanity would eventually be worn down by the Voidborn's superior numbers and technology. "Any word from Commander Quan?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Nothing since she left Mercury 3 days ago. What no one on Earth knew was that Rhea Quan had done exactly what she set out to do. 4 sentinels activated, their energy absorbed into her transformed being. But the final piece, Earth's own sentinel, remained elusive. Unlike the others, it wasn't buried beneath the surface or hidden in some remote location. It was scattered, fragmented into 7 pieces, and distributed across the planet thousands of years ago, each piece disguised as a natural formation or ancient monument. The progenitors had hidden Earth's sentinel more thoroughly than the others, knowing it would be the most likely target for their enemies. Rhea had spent days gathering the fragments, guided by the accumulated knowledge of the other sentinels. The Great Pyramid of Giza, Uluru in Australia, Lake Baikal in Siberia, Mount Kilimanjaro, the Mariana Trench, Easter Island, and finally, Machu Picchu. As she collected the final fragment from the ancient Incan ruins, she felt the pieces resonating together, ready to form the complete Earth Sentinel. But she also sensed something new. The Voidborn were deploying their most devastating weapons, the Null Spheres, designed specifically to suppress awakened abilities and sever the psychic network that had formed among Earth's defenders. "No time left," she whispered, bringing the 7 fragments together. They merged in a flash of blinding light, forming not a dodecahedron like the other sentinels, but a perfect sphere that pulsed with the combined energy of all 5 artifacts. This was the master key, the final activation point for humanity's full potential. Rhea absorbed its power, her consciousness expanding beyond even what the previous sentinels had granted her. She saw everything now, the full scope of the progenitor's plan, the true nature of the Voidborn, and the ultimate weapon that had been hidden within humanity all along. It wasn't just about individual abilities or powers. It was about connection, unity. The psychic network that had spontaneously formed was just the beginning. Hovering above Machu Picchu, Rhea extended her consciousness outward, touching the minds of every awakened human on the planet. Through her, they all suddenly understood. They weren't meant to fight as individuals. They were designed to function as a collective consciousness when needed, joining their abilities and minds into a unified whole greater than the sum of its parts. Together, she projected to all of them simultaneously. "We are stronger together." Across the planet, awakened humans stopped fighting as separate units and instead opened their minds to the network. Maya in Singapore joined her electronic manipulation abilities with a technician in Berlin, amplifying both their powers. A telekinetic in New York linked with 50 others worldwide, creating a telekinetic field strong enough to seize control of a Voidborn destroyer and crash it into one of their larger vessels. The Null Spheres the Voidborn had deployed fell from the sky, their suppression fields overwhelmed by the unified consciousness of humanity fighting back as one entity, while still maintaining their individual perspectives, something the hive-minded Voidborn could never understand. Rhea rose into the atmosphere, then beyond, approaching the Voidborn command ship. Her physical form now glowed with the combined energy of all 5 sentinels, barely resembling the human anymore. She had become the living embodiment of the progenitor's legacy, their knowledge, their power, and their desperate hope for redemption through their created children. Aboard his vessel, Selthrax felt her approach. "Impossible," he whispered, watching the sensors track her impossible ascent through space. "No failsafe species has ever achieved full integration this quickly." When she phased through the hull of his ship as if it were mist, he knew the battle was lost. The crew panicked, firing weapons that passed harmlessly through her transformed state. "You came to exterminate us," Rhea said, her voice resonating not through the air, but directly into their minds. "Just as you exterminated the progenitors millions of years ago." Selthrax backed away. They were a plague upon the cosmos, tampering with evolution, seeding their corrupt DNA across galaxies. "We are the natural order's immune response." Rhea smiled sadly. "No, you're just afraid." The progenitors evolved beyond your understanding, and you feared what they might become, what we are becoming. Through their unified consciousness, humanity seized control of the Voidborn network, their ships suddenly losing power or turning against each other. The invasion force that had seemed unstoppable just hours before was now in complete disarray. You have a choice, Rhea told Excelthrax. Retreat now. Leave this system and never return. Tell your people that Earth is protected. And if we refuse, the Supreme Commander snarled. Rhea didn't answer with words. Instead, she showed him, through direct mental connection, what humanity was becoming. Not just a reflection of the progenitors, but something new. Something that had taken the best of their creators and evolved it further through thousands of generations of human ingenuity, compassion, and determination. The Voidborn fleet began to withdraw within the hour, their carefully coordinated attack collapsing into a desperate retreat. They had come expecting to find another fledgling species struggling to activate their dormant potential. Instead, they had awakened a force beyond their capacity to fight. As the last enemy ships disappeared into the darkness beyond Neptune, Rhea Kwan returned to Earth, descending to the Neoradi Command Center, where General Torres waited with the leaders of the global resistance. Her glowing form materialized before them, still crackling with the combined energy of all 5 Sentinels. Even as they watched, the energy began to dissipate, returning her gradually to human form, though her eyes still contained galaxies. They're gone, she announced. For now. Will they come back? Torres asked. Rhea nodded. Eventually, but we'll be ready. The awakening has only begun. Around the world, the number of humans manifesting abilities continued to grow. The unified consciousness that had fought off the Voidborn remained accessible, though most returned to their individual perspectives once the immediate threat had passed. What happens now? Asked Dr. Emerson, who had survived the attack on the Europa station and made it back to Earth. Rhea looked upward, toward the stars beyond the ceiling. Now we rebuild. We learn to control these abilities, and then we take our place among the stars, as the progenitors intended. She held out her hand, projecting a holographic map of the galaxy. Scattered throughout it were thousands of worlds where other fragments of progenitor DNA might have been seeded, potential allies in the greater conflict that was sure to come. We are not alone, she said simply. And we never were. As humanity began the long process of rebuilding their shattered cities and integrating their new abilities into society, Rhea Kwan gathered a team of the most powerful awakened humans. Their mission was twofold: explore the solar system for any remaining progenitor technology, and prepare Earth's defenses for the Voidborn's inevitable return. The Sentinels had awakened something in humanity that could never be put back to sleep, their true potential hidden within their DNA for millennia, waiting for the moment when it would be needed most. They had faced extinction and emerged transformed, ready to claim their heritage among the stars. The ancient weapon had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same.